Well, welcome everyone to our session today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the reins over to Dan. Dan, if you want to go ahead and get us started, and we'll begin our panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody being on here, both panelists as well as attendees. Sure, we're all learning this together in the old virtual world here of doing an event like this for the first time. But I will tell you this: I am, on behalf of this panel, pleased to be here as part of this Twin Cities Startup Week, and pleased to be with all of you today. So a couple housekeeping things, because I know we got a lot to cover in a very short period of time, which hopefully you'll find beneficial. Number one, 45 minutes, let's actually call it about 43, 42 minutes now. We will have Q&A at the end if anyone wants to. Just know that at any point in time during this call, you can just chat your question in, and then at the tail end, if time permits, we will take some of those questions as we see them. I think just in the spirit of technology, let's make sure that everybody has phones muted to the degree you can, because I think that'll keep some distraction and background noise away from us. The panelists do have their ability to unmute and mute their phones in line, so you'll be hearing from them shortly. One thing, let's get right to it. So our topic, I think, is an extremely relevant one today, keeping sales connected, motivated, and closing in these times. And certainly we are in some interesting times nonetheless. I think it's extremely relevant to have the topic. It doesn't matter if you're a startup, if you're a mature entity. The reality is what we do at these times can be a fine line between success and failure, as I'm sure that a lot of us know as we go through our days, day in and day out. There's an old quote I'm reminded of when we think about sales: nothing happens until something gets sold. And the reality is, in these times, if we are not keeping sales alive and well, we could find ourselves into a little bit of trouble. So that's why I'm pleased to facilitate this panel of very seasoned, esteemed colleagues who have been doing some kind of sales leadership for a long period of time. What I think you'll see is not only do they have proven experience background, but they're just people who care. And I think that's what's going to come off in their responses today. So before I toss it to them, I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce myself. My name is Dan Juckness. I'm the Chief Sales Officer at SPS Commerce. And again, pleased to have these panel members with us. So I'm going to have them first give a little introduction of who they are, the companies they're with, a little bit about the entities that they're tied a part of, and then we'll get right into the questions. So without further ado, Lisa, welcome. I'd love you to introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Hello, everyone. So I'm Lisa Jilek. I lead sales and marketing for a company called Open Systems Technologies, or OST. It's an IT technology consultancy, and we help enterprise companies go digital. So whether that's on the IT side of the house or businesses on the business side trying to launch digital products and services. So a little bit about my sales team. I've got 22 sales individuals, 3 different sales roles ranging from field, mostly field sales executives, some that are centered around customer acquisition, some more on the account management side, and then I have an small inside sales team as well. So really happy to be here and excited about the conversation ahead.
Fantastic to have you, Lisa. Thank you. John, how about you?
Thanks, Dan. Hello, everybody. My name is John Koski. I'm the VP of Sales and Client Management for a startup business within Thomson Reuters called the Corporate Investigative Team. And really what we do is we sell products related to due diligence around regulated markets and the financials, kind of know your customer, know your vendor type of situations. We got a team of about 80 people. About 3/4 are field-based and 1/4 is based inside.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Great to have you here. Chrissy.
Morning, everybody. Chrissy Mathison, sales leader at SPS Commerce. I lead a team of about 150 that vary in roles. The majority of them are inside sales folks, but selling directly to customers and also business development roles. SPS Commerce lives squarely in the role of helping manufacturers or suppliers of goods, getting them onto the shelves of retailers. Been at SPS about 14 years.
It's nice to meet you, Chrissy.
Nice to meet you too, Dan.
Dave.
Hey Dan, thanks for having me. So I'm Dave Sandhoefner, Chief Revenue Officer at Delegate. We sell data analytics to restaurants. Sounds like a scary space at this time with the restaurants, but we primarily sell to large chains, quick service restaurants, and they're doing pretty well right now. And with the current environment, there's a lot of change going on in that business, and so they really have a need for our products. Delegate, I've been here 3 years. We're probably the closest thing to a startup on this board. We have 10 people on our sales team. We spent the last really pivoting our business to focus on our SaaS services and working on some product market fit. And we just prior to COVID hitting, we're starting to invest more in our growth, and we've picked that back up. So we're excited about adding additional sales resources as we move into the latter half of 2020 and the beginning of 2021. Thanks for having me.
Terrific. Thanks, Dave. And last but not least, Robert. Robert, I think you're muted.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, I think we may have lost Robert. So we'll wait for Robert to pop back on. But in the meantime, just from a little bit on Robert's background. So Robert spent, if I remember the year correctly, I hope I got it right, Robert, but I believe he said 1978. He's been in some sales capacity since that time period. Has extensive background from the likes of big companies like IBM to SPS Commerce to most recently consulting on sales training. Technically, he would call himself both retired and active in his consulting gigs on the sales training side. So brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to him. So hopefully he'll get back on with the technical stuff. But we'll jump right in. So as you guys, anyone who's out there can hear, we've got a really good mix of size of company to industry to the makeup of the sales teams. And as I kind of teed up at the very beginning, in these times, things are pretty interesting to keep a team connected and motivated, as well as closing. So you're going to hear a four themes in the next following questions. Things about morale, things about racial bias and systemic racism and the response that these folks and their entities are seeing. How we're dealing with fatigue and anxiety, the fatigue and anxiety that comes from a kind of a work from home environment, and then how important training plays a role in things. So you're going to hear those weave itself through because we felt as a panel team in these times, if we had a control over those things, the more likely success would take place. So first, from a morale standpoint, there's nothing more important than driving a positive culture and morale within. Can you folks share one or two of your best practices on how you're staying connected during this time, especially depending on the diversity of your workforce, whether that's age, ethnicity, et cetera, and with specific examples would be awesome. And maybe Dave, I could start with you.
Yeah, sure. So we've tried a number of different things as a company. Have a Friday afternoon happy hour that's converted to a Zoom happy hour company update to help everybody stay engaged. From a sales team standpoint, we have a morning stand-up at 8 every day where we hop on the phone, hop on a Zoom call, rotate the leader, and every day somebody different is responsible for doing some sort of morning motivation. So they'll either pop in a video, something humorous. We've had people do the reason they're grateful to have different people on their team. We've had inspirational articles, fitness goals, all sorts of things, just every day to kick off the day and get everybody's mind pointed to. This was started by our sales director who joined our company one day before we went to work from home. And so it was really important for him to be connected to the rest of the organization. And we've added in everybody from our go-to-market teams, our marketing, our sales ops. Everybody joins rotates it around. It takes about 3 weeks to get through the whole group. And you can tell it's valuable just based on how seriously everybody takes it, how engaged they are, the conversation afterwards. A little cheesy, but I also think people just love it and are craving that type of engagement, that type of positive outlook to start their day when they know they might be sitting in front of their computer in their basement for 8-9 hours that day. So it's been a good program.
I love it, Dave. Sometimes that cheese factor is an important thing, at times like this. So, and I love the fact that you weave in the other parts of the org and that you're deliberate about it at the beginning of the day. I think that's awfully important. The other thing is I like that you're not the one necessarily driving it, but you got a sales director that's also taking part in that. Hey, Chrissy, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things from our perspective. So we have a fairly inside sales team, as I mentioned. So we are collectively together in the office a lot. And over the years, we've developed some traditions around the end of the quarter, like we show up in band t-shirts on the last day of the quarter. It's a hard day. We all grind that day. And so it's a fun way to stay connected and to learn about each other. We also have in our world what we call Buzz Alley, which we're all there all day. We're working hard. So we have a ton of snacks and treats. And really at the end of the day, it's about collecting people around, we'll call it the new water cooler. Well, when we moved into COVID, we couldn't let the traditions die. So we still wear our band t-shirts on the last day of the quarter. It just shows up in pictures in a PowerPoint slide. In this last quarter, actually, I ended up just mailing out to each one of the employees a box of candy and a note just to remind them about the things that were happening at the end of the quarter. And I think it's the little things in the stability through these times that I think provides the most value. And really everything that's going on outside of the world, continuing to create that environment where people can come in and know what to expect and to trust, I think has really motivated the sales teams.
I love it. Great examples, Chrissy. And Robert, looks like you're back.
Yes.
So yeah, I love it. So maybe two things. I can repeat the question, but also I did probably a poor job at and talking about your background. You could probably do more justice than I. So maybe you could give a little bit about your background, Robert, and then I could tee up the same question.
Sure. I spent the last 40 years in high-tech sales. I worked for a number of high-tech companies over my career. I retired from corporate America in October of 2018, and since have been working as a sales and marketing consultant for a company called Growth Development Associates. I worked for IBM for 18 years in Silicon Graphics, where we sold hardware. Then I went to Lawson Software, where I had software experience. From Lawson Software to SBS Commerce, where I was involved with software as a service, which was a very, very interesting opportunity. And then Thompson Finewell. I ended my career with NetApp, handling their global systems integrators out of India. And as I said, currently today, I'm a consultant doing marketing and sales training for Growth Development Associates.
Love it. It's great to have you here. Thank you. And so you probably caught the tail end, which was the question was on these teams, connected, in these kinds of times and sharing the best practice on how, you might think about keeping those teams connected, what the makeup of those teams are. Anything from your past experience or even current, Robert, that you'd share?
Yes, I would. I think trust and confidence, developing trust and confidence with the teams are critically important. And we do those in a various number of ways. You have to have constant communications in terms of, you could call it weekly conference calls or monthly conference calls. And I think it's important that you let team members learn from each other. So whether you want to call it forecasting or just the activities that you are doing to close an opportunity, if each person takes that time to share what we are doing to close, then the other team members can learn. One other thing that I would say that I've done over my career that has been very productive, it kind of wraps in with marketing, is I'll ask my team leaders to bring forth an offense in these monthly team meetings. And an offense could be like, okay, we're gonna have this quarter a contest called competitive replacements. We're gonna go after competition where we can replace their products with ours, or their offerings with ours. Or it may be a national upgrade month, because a lot of times customers, salespeople view a sale as a transaction, but I always like for them to think of it as the beginning of a relationship. And, you can get a lot from existing customers a lot easier than it is selling to a new customer. So that's what I would add to what's already been said.
Love it, and relevant all the way across the board. Thank you, Robert. Really good. So keep that back in your minds, whether you're mature company, startup company, interested in mature versus startup, or anywhere in between. The morale of the sales org is awfully important. There's different ways to attack that. Next topic, which, by the way, again, we all talked about it. We'd be remiss if we did not bring it up, but knowing that it's a 40-minute time period, to even think we can do this topic justice would be a mistake. But again, to not bring it up would also be a mistake. So the next topic I want to bring up is this concept of racial bias and what is not, which is the obvious systemic nature of racism. Knowing that this topic is so big, and knowing that we have compressed time, wanted to know just what, at the top of your heads, you guys, what are you doing, whether personally or your companies, to keep that conversation of racial injustice alive and at the forefront, and any kind of relevant commentary you've got about that, knowing again that this issue is much bigger than us individually. And maybe John, we could start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. I think it's been on our minds for the last many years, and, not just the racial, but also trying to make sure that we're not boxing in certain genders for certain roles. It's been on our minds for quite a while, but, in working with this, what we realized is that oftentimes our applicant group is not diverse. So it's pretty hard to be diverse in the outcomes when your applicant group is not diverse. So we've been working really closely with our recruiting side upstream to make sure that our applicant group is diverse, so that when we're hiring, that basis is well-rounded.
Yeah, very good. I get it. And again, like when you think about it, the size of the topic is so great, it could be days and days of the conversation. Lisa, how about you, from your perspective?
Yeah, kind of seconding what John mentioned, we're finding the same thing with candidate pools and really trying to make an intentional effort on diversity of our candidates. In addition, our organization, like I'm sure many others out there, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, or DEI, super active, and have created, I think, a lot of great opportunities for our employees to engage in different ways. So we've got webinars with internal panelists, with external thought leaders. There's a book club right now. I think they're reading White Fragility. Our leader, our CEO, is incredibly active and visible on this topic as well. And she actually just recently interviewed a woman named Shannon Cohen for one of our podcasts, really talking about how to authentically be part of the solution of racial equity, and just a conversation around that. It was pretty powerful. And for me personally, I think I would just admit that this year has really been kind of a wake-up call for me to be more vocal in the conversation with my team, and that, it's not something to sort of shy away from the conversation in the workplace, that it's not a political thing, it's a human thing. And for me, kind of more of a commitment to be, like I said, more vocal and be part of the conversation more actively.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Lisa. Chrissy, anything from your perspective?
Yeah, a couple of things I would just add there. Similar, Lisa, to you, at SPS Commerce, our CEO actually named this as a strategic initiative for SPS, and really has been engaged in starting from a foundation, I would say, of education, which has been really important. And then for me personally, to your point, Lisa, I think it's about stepping into the conversations when they can be had, instead of walking the other way. And I'm personally, for me also, I'm really just trying to focus on hope in the situation because it is very complex and heavy, topics that are happening. But the reality is being able to focus on that hope and be in those conversations, I think just opens the dialogue for change to happen.
Super. Thank you, Chrissy. Robert?
Yes, this is something that's probably near and dear to my heart, not only racial, but gender around the clock. I think it's very important to look across any organization from top to bottom to see how diverse it is, all the way from the board of directors to the executive management team, all the way down to the applicant, because people have a tendency to have affinity with people who they can relate to. And as a Black person in America who's been in executive leadership positions, I know that in all of the positions that I've been in, and if I look across America, all the positions that some of my peers who are African American have been in, we have done more to actually increase that diversity from an executive level than you can by just starting down low and trying to grow an organization, because it's going to always be a part of your thinking in any company if all the way from the board of directors down to the sales rep, you have a diverse environment. And those are the folks who are going to be able to help you find the people that are capable of doing the job. Another thing that's important, and I'll wrap up with this, is that you have to make sure you put the right people in the right job. You can go find a candidate that might not be suited for sales, and they fail. If that's the case, you need to move them out and find them something that they are most suited to. And for those who are new to it, you need to develop a career plan with them. Understand what their aspirations are, put a development plan in place that includes training, education that will help them develop the skills that they need to grow in that organization. But I think it starts all the way at the top. And if a company really wants to create a diverse environment, they need to look from top to bottom and make sure that every level of the organization is diverse.
Yeah, that hits home, Robert, definitely. In a conversation, I know Chrissy alluded to it at press conference we've definitely had. And I'm also reminded, even in your and I conversation, I mentioned to you 1 year ago, we were going to do this exact same panel, and I didn't have any Black American represented in here. So it was kind of a look in the mirror at that point in time to assess some of that stuff too. It's been kind of what Lisa said. It's been an interesting self-assessment piece. Dave, anything you'd answer to or add to the combo here?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We're certainly committed to it on our senior leadership team. We've communicated to the organization, and we're looking for real-world opportunities to continue to advance DEI. Our CEO, Jason Tober, is forming or working with a group of other local software companies, other CEOs, to advance this idea and together to really increase the diversity within software companies in the market. So anybody interested that might be listening, definitely reach out to them. I know they're looking to expand that group. From a personal level, just to echo some challenges that John and Chrissy and Lisa all shared is the candidate pool. And I've always looked at that and, I guess use that as an excuse. And I would just say at this point, not an excuse that I'm comfortable making anymore. So similar to some of their thoughts, we're looking at our job descriptions to be a little bit more expansive, inclusive. Maybe some people that haven't had the same opportunities that we've had to move into these roles. Also, where we're recruiting, where we're finding our candidates. There is a program out of Chicago, a group that does a lot of mentorship in software companies, and I've reached out to them to see if we can maybe mirror some of their best practices and try and bring some of that to Minneapolis. So early days, but something I'm certainly committed to and eager for this question to hear what others are doing and eager to see where this is a year from now.
Really good. Well, I appreciate all of you guys taking the time to answer that kind of top of mind, sensitive a topic, but also knowing that we would probably all prefer to have a lot more time to dive deeper into that for sure. One thing I would just say is I think the fact that we are just named leaders in organizations, it is definitely at minimum our obligation to have an opinion and a platform and use that platform as we can to as Lisa mentioned, authentically be part of some solution. So I think that's terrific. All right, so now I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and I'm going to actually move to this topic of training before we get to kind of the fatigue, anxiety thing that I was saying before. So I think that we'd all agree, or you all would agree, as a cornerstone to a successful sales organization is the development of your salespeople. So knowing that training is that critical to driving a winning team, how do you invest and be transparent with your sales team through training and operations to keep their skill set sharp, whether that's sales skills, product skills, or other? And how has this changed specifically in 2020? John, can I start with you?
Sure. It's funny because our business is really unique within Thomson Reuters. If you look at other business units, they're after one specific department within a corporation. And with our team, it's multiple use cases across different departments. And these departments oftentimes don't have common naming conventions. So we established a culture of education because it's how we had to be. And really that's kind of carried through. I'll give you an example. Last year, what was the end of 2018, if I want to know where we're headed, I've always talked to our tech team, so more of our sales engineers. When I talk to them, I know where we're going. And I realized really quickly with, some of their discussions have been involving more API discussions. So realizing that what we ended up doing is realizing that the team had to kind of transition from selling a product to having a workflow and automation discussion with our customer base. And what's really interesting is, we put together, and what's neat with the team is that, we kind of have this, it takes a village, we're all in it, mentality. And the leadership team put together, 3-part series around educating people around APIs. It's about being comfortable selling differently, right? And, that was in 2019. And our sales midway through this year, more than 50% of our sales were APIs, when in 2018, it was less than 5%. So it's really changing, kind of how we do things. But really, when the team sees the leadership team investing in it together, it inspires others to do the same, which I really think is neat. One example in COVID is that we realized, hey, at the end of the day, we're going to come out of this stronger than we did going into it. And, really with all these different use cases, we put together pod sessions. And what we did is we repurposed that work, pulled in other partners, whether it's marketing and other support groups that support our business, to really help. It's basically our intranet site. We've got all types of resources that teach people about our business so we can grow faster. So it's about how you live, I think. It's not certain one initiative here or there, but it's about how you live as a management team.
Yeah, sounds like a way of being. You mentioned something about, if I could, on clarification, when leadership team is invested in it, it kind of motivates the sales group. I think what you were saying, maybe you can confirm, is not just investment in dollars, but investment of them actually going through the same kind of training, almost like a walk the talk kind of scenario. Yes. Is accurate, John?
That's exactly true. Even more so that way than the monetary investment. It's, when they see that, it inspires, I think, the rest of the team. And I think that just becomes the culture of your team and how you work.
No doubt. Amen. Lisa, anything you'd add or you guys have seen or done differently where you're at?
Yeah, so I've got for the most part, highly tenured team with over a third of them have been with the company for more than a decade. So they know our customers well, they know the gig well. Still training critically important, of course, but kind of in a little bit of a different way. So what we've done over the last year, there's 3, and this is getting a little tactical, but for those on the line that are just taking some tips, 3 things that we're doing. One, we have a monthly, what's called sales craft. My sales enablement manager leads it once a month. So it's an hour once a month kind of dedicated to training. Topics vary typically from like one of our practice leaders coming in and talking about messaging or customer wins or things like that to learn from, or maybe it's on a particular sales skill. The second kind of mechanism is every Tuesday morning we have a standing meeting with, it's not just the sales team, it's also anybody that's like a customer facing leader that gets in front of customers often, where the purpose is not a pipeline sort of CRM meeting, it's more about information sharing, because I'm sure most of us would agree in these times, knowing what's happening with their customers broadly is critically important. So it's a time for each person to share just what they're seeing with their customers, so that even if the salesperson doesn't have an opportunity to share because it's a quick meeting, they might learn something about another customer that's an insight they can take back to their customer. So less formal training and more almost like a microburst of information sharing, but that's intentional weekly. And then the third component is I've got a monthly sales team meeting where part of the agenda is things you might expect, like highlighting wins and woos and all that. But part of it is a learning agenda item that's standing, and it's most often a sales rep sharing a win from the month prior, but breaking it down. So who was the customer? Why did they come to us? Why did they choose us? What approach did you take? Getting to the mechanics, so that it really becomes a learning moment for others to share. So just some of the ways that we've tried to incorporate training. Again, less formal and given the makeup of my team, but still in an intentional way.
I'm also reminded of how training is just core to how you are, Lisa, from prior life, for sure.
Yeah.
It comes out in your words. It's interesting too. You made me think. I'm sure whether you're a mature company, startup company, anywhere in between, the conversation of scale, setting up to scale, is always there. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think sometimes we lose certain definitions of words, and I don't know if people actually have talked about what scale really is. And I think what you just described is scale, in my opinion, is transferring knowledge. And what you just described there was that ability to do that. I'm because all of you know how technically savvy that I am, I'm actually going to take a question, because the question pertains to training, and I'll let anybody kind of chime in and answer it. But somebody wrote, how do you get new hires specifically up to speed effectively when full remote? Who wants to take that on?
I'll maybe take that one and just add on to the training topic. So we actually did on a couple of our sales teams have new employees hired like the day we went remote. So our entire sales training team had to pivot to accommodate them. But they go through pretty normal product training and sales training anyway. What we did was that first day that they started, we quickly assembled a leadership panel to welcome them all, intro them to the business, make them feel welcome, to sort of set the stage from a culture perspective. And then we aligned them really closely with their sales teams that they would be working with every day, which then they just got included into the normal weekly meetings, the morning stand-ups, which some of the other sales leaders were talking about. And then I would say those folks have done pretty well remote because they were accommodated into those sales teams. And then the last thing I would just add on the training topic, to your point, Lisa, we had SPS sold a very specific way for many years, including myself. I grew up in that environment, and we had to make a pretty large pivot in the way that we approached the market and the way that we were selling, which meant we had to bring 150 salespeople along. Probably the most successful thing that I found was literally having salespeople do the pitch to their leadership team, all the way up, managers, directors, to myself, and being able to sit in on every single one of those and be able to give good constructive feedback was impactful. Now, they all freaked out about it. They were very anxious about it and nervous about it. But on the other side of it, they all got a nugget of wisdom that really helped them moving forward.
Super. Good. Anybody else to add anything? Otherwise, I can move on to the next topic.
Dan, just to add in really quick, what I would say with new teams, with new teams, I feel like, nowadays even more so versus before, is paying attention on less so the number early on, but more so on creating a energy and environment with the team around things that contribute to the number. So it's appointments, it's pipeline building, and just those simple things, but creating a buzz and energy around it with the new team so that they can develop versus realize the gap they're creating in their, in their progress. I think that was one of the key things that we learned this year with having a group of new people starting just prior to COVID. So that's one thing we learned.
Makes a ton of sense, especially those things connected to the behaviors they need to drive to get the result, because the result doesn't happen right away, to your point. So yeah, good. So thanks for the question and those responses, panel. So now we'll move to the next topic, which is one that seems to be a lot more prevalent, and that's this fatigue and anxiety. I heard after the pandemic first started around the April-May timeframe, I can't remember the name of this individual, but mentioned that the next pandemic will be a pandemic of anxiety as people get used to the uncertainty, or don't get used to the uncertainty and deal with those things. So, and one thing I think we'd all agree is the novelty of working from home has tended to wear a bit off. So how have you encouraged your sales teams, inside or outside in the field, as well as prospects and customers, to adapt and stay motivated? And I'd love some examples of what's worked, and even examples where things haven't worked, because we know, I'm sure we've tried and failed at some things. So Dave, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think the first thing that we started with was a focus, or maintaining our focus on results. Obviously, the world changed. Lots of things were uncertain, and keeping ourselves centered on what we were there to do, what our job was, has helped. Where we pivoted, a couple areas, really tried to focus on the organizational ownership of the number. So engaging marketing, sales ops, teams, all on that ownership of achieving our numbers. We're small enough where each one of our reps understands their impact to the business with their results. So it's been pretty easy to keep everybody focused on that piece. The other thing that we've done is we've been much more directive. And I think that's helped with some of the anxiety. Waking up every day, trying to figure out what you're going to do in this new world can be challenging. And so we've pivoted to much more of a campaign focus. We've built a sales calendar to mirror our product roadmap, and put those two together. And we really launched sales, marketing, and product campaigns that have been coordinated efforts, probably valuable in any environment, but has been much more valuable now, and has given the team an opportunity to just take the game plan and drive forward. And that's helped both with results, and I think.
I like that, Dave. Robert, you're in an interesting position.
Stamp.
Oh, sorry, Dave. You good? Okay,
no,
sorry.
I was going to say, from a customer standpoint, consistent about clicking on Zoom and inviting them to do the same. It's interesting to see those that want to engage that way, those that don't. But that's I think helped develop some more personal relationships. And then everybody's business is different or looks different than it did 3 months ago. So I feel like there's a different openness for engagement than we've seen in the past. So I'll let you pass it over to Robert.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah. No, it's good. I think there's a little delay on my end, so I apologize. Robert, you have an interesting background, the length of time and the different businesses you've been a part of, and then this most recent consulting on the training side. Anything come to mind when you start thinking about this fatigue, anxiety question that might be worth sharing, of how you might handle it or had in past life?
Yes, the last job that I had with NetApp, I worked primarily from home, and I had a lot of employees that were in India. And one of the things that I needed to do was make sure that there was constant communications. So I had conference calls every week. I had my directors have conference calls every week to make sure that they were motivating their employees. And it goes back to some of the training. You can still do role play. There's a lot of background noise. You can still do role play using Zoom or hop in and things like that. And I think that's critically important. I also like the idea that you would, I think it was Chrissy who brought up the fact that, you will have your employees calling on the executives in your company, because if you think about it, they're calling on executives in other companies, right? That'll keep them sharp and prepared. I've always thought the preparation is the key to success, and you just got to keep them active, and you have to stay engaged with them. If you don't, you can lose them. If you do, you get a feel for whether they are checking out, whether they are really staying with the game or whatever. So I think you just have to stay engaged. That's I
No doubt. Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Hey, I want to be respectful of time. So it's 9:59. I know we can go a few minutes over for those attendees that want to hang on, but and I know for panelists, if anyone needs to roll, you roll. But I did want to wrap with potentially one piece of quick advice from all of you to either a startup entity or a mature company that's looking to do something different with their sales team. What would that piece of advice be to anyone who's attending? And we can start with whoever would like to. Lisa, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think my piece of advice, particularly in the startup space, would be to hire for consultative sales skills. Somebody that can, even if they don't have the depth or the industry knowledge or the background, can look online, do some quick research, pull together a point of view, articulate that to drive a conversation. Like, that ability, I think, is critical. And then, you can always arm them with the customer stories and the sales engineer or whoever the subject matter expert is in the organization. But pulling that in early, but hiring for those consultative sales skills, I think, is important early on.
Love it. Thank you, Lisa. John?
Yeah, I would say there's two things. One, I firmly believe that leadership has to have a genuine passion for the pursuit. If that's not core, I think it changes the whole environment for the team. And then I also think that the one thing we always pay attention to and try to be intentional about is making sure that everybody in our business invests in the brand they bring to the customer. And what I mean by that is, like, what are the customers saying about our organization and them after the meeting ends or the door closes? And I think if too many people just go about kind of doing their thing, whereas you can tell when you're in a meeting with somebody who actually is deliberate about the brand they bring to the customer, I think that brings a new energy across the business as well as your customer base.
Yeah, love it. John, thank you. Robert, how about you?
Yes, I think it would be very important for a startup to actually develop joint objectives with their sales team. In other words, don't just put objectives out there, but develop joint objectives so that the salespeople feel a sense of ownership. Secondly, they should share the behaviors of the best salespeople that they've worked with throughout their career. If you're starting up a company, obviously you've been in sales. Share that with those new employees so that they can replicate those behaviors. And thirdly, the most important thing is when you create those objectives, make sure that they are measurable. In other words, if you want to be a far exceeds employee, then just meeting these objectives won't get you there. If you were to sell, to use a simple example, 5 cars a month, and that's your goal, That's just meeting the requirements of the job. If you want to be the very best, you need to go far beyond that and make sure that they know what goals, if they hit a certain goal, that they can achieve that level of performance.
Robert, thank you. Dave.
Yes. So simple. Build a process. Trust the process. Affected by daily highs, lows, and look over a much longer range. In a startup mode, it's so important that you focus on the long term and get distracted by the daily. And so I really just keep consistent, keep moving forward. Certainly refine your strategy, but just remain committed to it.
Easier than said than done on the stay away from the daily highs and lows, right, Dave, for a salesperson or a sales leader? No doubt. Really good. Chrissy?
I would actually echo a little bit of what Lisa and what John were talking about. I firmly believe that you can have the best products out there in the market if you do not have a passionate, authentic team from sales rep all the way up to leadership representing that in the market. It doesn't work. And so that means that you've got to be authentic. You have to have drive. You have to be connected as a unit out there, bringing that into the market, and you have to be able to pivot. And not necessarily, I agree with Dave's feedback on, from a startup perspective, but if your message is not resonating with your prospect, you need to pivot, and you need to pivot quickly. And that could be in an individual deal. It could be a little bit broader than that. But being able to bring that product passionately to market, I think, is key.
Yeah, love it. Good. Okay. 2 minutes, because I know I got notice that we can keep this open, but there's one question out there that wasn't answered directly, but Lisa, appreciate you jumping on the one question in the chat, so hopefully everybody saw that. But it seems like some questions from a couple of people around, hey, what's the technology that really is most useful for a sales team, particularly one that's now maybe working remote? Are there certain technologies, you guys, that are starting to be at the forefront of that dialogue that have been helpful of late to drive either efficiency or effectiveness? Obviously, Zoom, we know, or obviously virtual technology like this, but anything else you'd add to that?
I'll just maybe add here that I have a largely inside sales team. So Zoom has provided them value because they're seeing customers they wouldn't normally see and prospects they wouldn't normally see. But I would also say that they've been super engaged and active on LinkedIn. So they've been following multiple campaigns where they're looking at prospects that they're trying to get into and messaging via LinkedIn as a social platform, which maybe it was important before, but it's even more important now.
Yeah.
This may sound like
Very
a
good.
weird one to throw in to the technology, but people are answering cell phones more. We're finding both existing customers, we have, long-term relationships where you would expect to have, cell contact or texting, access. But even from a prospecting standpoint, people have their phones on them in front of their computers and are more apt to answer, which I would, surprising to say maybe a year ago, but today we're finding that prospecting cell phones seems to be working.
Love it. Sometimes it's those little common sense things that you don't realize, and it's boom. It's like so obvious you just don't even think about it. Well, hey, terrific, you guys. So, I just want to say a very sincere thank you, Lisa, John, Robert, Chrissy, Dave. Clearly, what you guys have done, the way you conduct yourselves, it's obvious. It comes across even virtually. And you were using the words genuine and authentic as descriptors for things you talked about, but that's what you came across as on this call, every one of you. And I think that's really, really important. To everybody who's attending, thanks so much. Appreciate the questions. I'm sure I speak for everybody and say, wish we had even 2-3 hours to do this because there's a lot to talk about. But I thank everybody. I thank Twin Cities Startup, and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice.
All right.